I agree that we shouldn't blame victims. I disagree that men are the victims in this situation. If women have standards that they uphold when they're out in public as not to get raped or stalked, I don't see the men as the victim in that situation.
I hear men say like, oh, ever since the Me Too movement, I just can't talk to women without being labeled a creep. Damn, if the Me Too movement, in other words, women feeling empowered to report sexual assault and harassment, if that is impacting your dating game, you should take a hard look in the mirror.
Right. So there's a difference between having actual disadvantage and then no longer being entitled to something. Though that may feel the same, often equality can feel like oppression to the people who have been in power. And I think that's what this is. You're listening to the Phallacies Podcast, Episode 3, The Male Loneliness Epidemic. Is it real or the byproduct of a pity party?
Fallacies, 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 fallacies.
Okay, well, welcome to the Phallacies Podcast. We're here to challenge and deconstruct ideas, attitudes, prejudices, misconceptions, aka fallacies, about what it means to be a man.
That is right. That's where I come on.
Yeah.
The quote of our show. Often it is only after immense intellectual effort, which may have continued over centuries, that humanity at last succeeds in achieving knowledge of a concept in its pure form by stripping off the irrelevant accretions which veil it from the eye of the mind.
Love that.
Gottlieb Frege. We're going to read that quote every single episode, so get used to it. Because that's what we're doing here. We are taking the beliefs that dominate the discourse surrounding what it is to be a man and manhood, and we are going to subject those beliefs to some rigorous logical examination. So that's stripping away the irrelevant accretions, the ego, the tribalism, the emotional baggage, the lazy black and white thinking that keeps these conversations stuck on repeat. So we call this process the ring. If you want to have heated opinions, that's okay, but get in the ring and let's see if those can stand up to a rigorous but basic line of questioning.
And speaking of rigorous and basic, who are we and why do...
I'm basic.
Yeah.
He's rigorous.
I think I'm pretty basic too. I don't like Coldplay anymore.
I love Coldplay.
You would.
Yeah.
Basic ass bitch.
That's right.
But I do love like Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead. That makes me pretty basic.
Fish. Basic ass bitch. Okay.
So why should anyone listen to us? Why do two more white dudes need to have a podcast? What do we have to say that could possibly be of any value? It's something that I ask myself constantly, that I'm insecure about, even as we sit here in these very chairs. Mm-hmm. So, I can't really speak for myself, but I can speak for you in this case. And one reason I think you're highly qualified on this issue is one word, catharsis. Actually, two words.
We're going serious.
Catharsis method. Dash here has created an amazing tool, a deck of cards, sort of like emotional maturity, solitaire, if you will, that helps walk people through and processing, very strong, powerful emotions that we feel. It's helped me a ton. It's a beautiful, beautiful tool that I know you spent years developing. That's just kind of in its infancy of getting out there and into the public sphere. But it's helped me through some difficult emotions and concept. I know it's helped other people as well. So on a more serious note, I think that's an amazing tool that you've created that absolutely qualifies you to talk about this stuff.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. For you, I would say that the reason that you're qualified to talk on this subject, I'm going to go with a funny one. Or no, just a respectable one.
Okay.
The best steak I've ever had in my life was up in the mountains camping when this guy pulls out his cast iron skillet, throws on this juicy steak, and he has this paper bag of wild mushrooms that he mixes into the pan. And it has nothing to do with the substances that were in my body, but it was the greatest steak I've ever had because this man can cook. And he can cook anywhere, even when he's like making the fire.
Let him cook.
I know, let him cook. Seriously, let him cook.
Well, I'm glad you think that qualifies me.
I think it does.
I love to cook. And
it's cooking a steak, too.
That was a good steak.
Right.
Yeah, that was a good day.
Oh, yeah.
Climbed a mountain. You did some drugs.
I threw up everywhere, only got halfway up the mountain. Now I'm disqualifying myself from the manhood conversations. The elevation was too quick. I had taken some meds. I threw up everywhere. So I went back down to camp, did drugs by myself. They went up, they scaled it, the three of them, peak.
It was a good day.
It was a great day.
Yeah.
It was great.
All right. So today's episode is brought to us by a fallacy.
Yes, sir.
What is it?
We're going to start with a pretty basic one.
look
You
at
want to
this.
read that one?
The straw man, misrepresenting someone's argument to make it easier to attack. After Bob said that we should be nice to kittens, Will says Bob wants to be mean to puppies. Everyone boos Bob, who is clearly a mean jerk, for wanting to hurt poor, cute puppies. I love this fallacy. I use it all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and what I love about this is the reverse of what we're trying to do on the show.
Yeah.
We are trying to steel man the arguments, which means we're trying to present them in their strongest form, while a straw man does the opposite. It's taking someone's argument and kind of disingenuously turning it into a weaker version so that you can attack it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, today, the topic that we're going to be looking at, we are examining the male loneliness epidemic.
Ooh.
And whether it represents a legitimate social crisis or if it is just men failing to adapt.
This is a tough one. This is a good one. I'm excited to get into this.
I'll give just a little disclaimer here.
Yeah.
We are going to be getting into the ring and having a good discussion, trying to pick each other's logic apart, but a little bit different on this episode. Afterwards, we are going to kind of take a more empathetic approach to try and identify some of the real pain points behind this issue, as well as some of the hard truths that we think need to come out of the issue.
So today, you're going to be steel manning the progressive viewpoint that the male loneliness epidemic is mostly fake news, and to the extent it is real, it's due to toxic masculinity. I'll be steel manning the traditional conservative take that the male loneliness epidemic is absolutely real and that men are victims of forces beyond their control. So,
Aliens.
all right, let's get in the ring.
Let's get in the ring. Ding, ding.
Before we must do our traditional toast to the man,
God love
the legend, Gottlieb Frege. Here's to Gottlieb.
All right. In this corner, we have Charlie taking on the traditional outlook, the traditional take. So, take it away with your opening statement.
Well, first of all, look at the data and tell me there's no crisis. Men report higher rates of loneliness, fewer close friendships, more isolation. I think the smoking gun, pardon the pun here, is that men are 4 times more likely to kill themselves than women. That's a very real stat. Social institutions that once connected men, churches, unions, bowling leagues, fraternal organizations, they've collapsed. Young men are more isolated than any generation in history. Dismissing this is not compassionate. It's refusing to see a real pattern of very real suffering. The male loneliness epidemic isn't about men whining or making excuses. It's about recognizing that the social infrastructure men relied on has disintegrated. Men built friendships through doing things together, working, building, competing, solving problems. Modern life has stripped away these contexts. Remote work, digital entertainment, the decline of third places, fragmented communities. These aren't personal failures. They're structural changes that hit men particularly hard because of how male friendships actually form. Not to mention online dating, how that is rigged in the favor of women, and how recent changes in society have made it so men just really can't even approach women these days without being labeled creeps. They're afraid to even interact with women because of things that have been happening socially. So acknowledging the male loneliness epidemic gives men something desperately needed: validation, empathy, and understanding that their struggle is real and structural, not just personal failure. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe examine why male suffering triggers your skepticism more than your empathy. And that discomfort, that's exactly what keeps men from seeking help.
Okay. That's a good opening. So I'll just jump to kind of a more obvious question first. How do we know that the higher suicide rate is directly correlated with loneliness and isolation?
So how do we know it's correlation, causation, correlation? We're not getting confused.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's just common sense. If you have fewer friends, which, studies, polls, a lot of information shows that men are reporting fewer friendships than ever before and fewer friendships than women. So it's not a universal issue. It is a male issue. You have fewer friends, you're isolated, et cetera. You're more at risk for suicide and you're less able to get help. You're sad. You don't have a support structure around you. Maybe you're in that moment of truth. You don't have somebody that you can call who's close that can help you get out of that.
Okay. I'm going to stick with the stat for just a second because that is very compelling. 4 times as likely. But there are a couple things to think about. So with that stat, there are other factors like men use more lethal means of attempting to commit suicide, which is a big part because there are statistics that actually show that women attempt to commit suicide more often than men. While
men are just better at everything.
While men successfully do it.
Yeah. Women try, men do.
Gotcha. Doing the traditional point.
Yeah.
But then also, men have higher rates of substance abuse, which I think could be factored into the suicide. Mm-hmm. And they have a greater reluctance to seek help than women do.
Yeah.
And both of those things feel more self-imposed. So couldn't those factor into that higher suicide rate?
Sure, maybe, but substance abuse and other factors, I think, are also symptomatic of the greater pressures placed on men by society. Like, why are more men using substances? If you're citing that as something that's self-imposed, you're sort of implying that, like, men are just worse than women, so they just do more drugs and drink more alcohol. I mean, couldn't it also be that the pressures placed on men are greater? The pressures to provide, you can't date unless you have a good job. You can't date unless you're over 6 feet tall and you're fit. Those pressures are leading not only to suicide, but substance abuse and other dissatisfaction, which is just a big snowball effect.
Okay, I see what you're saying. But those social pressures would lead to a person ideating about suicide and then possibly attempting to commit suicide. And there are reports that show that women attempt to commit suicide as much. So the social pressures thing, being some male exclusive thing, doesn't totally track with the data. So I think what a more likely culprit could be behind it is that women are more likely to seek help, and women also are better at emotional regulation than men are. And so even though there are similarities in their suicidal ideation, men are less likely to get care.
That could all be true, but the key word there is could. That's all speculative in nature, whereas the outcomes for men are measurably worse. It's just factual. 4 times more likely to die, more substance abuse, more isolation. Yeah, women have problems too, of course, but the data is specifically dire for men, while it's also remained fairly static for women over time. It's something that is increasing by 3, 4, 5 times for men over the last 15 to 20 years.
Okay. I think we're probably deep enough in the weeds on that point that there's not a lot more constructive to do. So I'm going to jump to your second point,
All right.
which a piece of it that stood out to me was talking about that the current dating culture is
Online dating, yeah.
is rigged to favor women.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting.
Okay.
There are definitely stats about women reporting in higher numbers that they are dissatisfied and feel that their gender is the more disadvantaged one when it comes to the dating culture. I have seen stats where men feel the same, so I do see where you're coming from. When it comes to women's experience, though, in the dating, and their dissatisfaction coming from things like harassment or unsolicited, explicit content, I'll say, or dates with men who misrepresented themselves. I guess catfishing is not unique to one sex, but if women have all the power, why are they so dissatisfied as well?
Well, I think you're talking about two different issues here. We're talking about loneliness. Yeah, these are different problems. Men and women have different problems online. Yeah, of course, women get harassed. They get explicit messages. Men can be creepy, overly aggressive, whatever. Like that happens. But we are specifically talking about loneliness. We're not talking about all that. A lot of men I know would kill to get sexually harassed. You know, they'd kill to be like, hey, like nice biceps, or like let's make out. You know, or like I won't even get into all the stories I've heard about messages that women get. I know it's bad, but like I'm serious. Like a lot of men would like love to get messages like that. Now, I understand that that's a different issue as well. That's perspective. That's privilege. Men don't really know what it's like to fear for their lives the way women do. Mm-hmm. But the point is, we're talking about loneliness. And on average, the ratio of men to women on the apps is 3-1. It's worse on Tinder. Tinder's about 4-1. Bumble's about 50-50. But overall, it's 3-1. Companionship starts with opportunity, and men objectively have far fewer opportunities. That's why they're more lonely than women. Also, constant rejection is soul-crushing. It leads to low confidence, but yet confidence is supposed to be one of the most attractive qualities that women are looking for. So, like, how can men be confident when they're constantly rejected, can't get a match, can't get a like, can't get the time of day? They finally do get a match online. They send a message. They try to like look at the woman's profile, be thoughtful about what they're messaging, you know, because yeah, the creepy shit happens, but most men are not sending those messages. Most men are doing their best to be respectful, just trying to get any scrap of engagement from women. They get nothing. If they do get something, it's one-word answers. They're totally having to carry and lead the conversations. And the reason for that is because that woman that they're trying to talk to has like 500 other matches, you know? And so this guy's competing with 500 other people for her attention. So it's not that she's a bad person or that women are bad people compared to men. It's just that the system is rigged against the men. They just have way too much competition.
So when you say rigged by whom? The dating apps or the nature of attraction and men and women?
By the apps. I mean, these apps are designed to make money. The data shows that men are far more likely to subscribe and have premium accounts. And so it is targeted at men to get more men to sign up. And that's why you have a ratio of 3-1 on there.
It's interesting. I think this is another point that I don't know how productive it is to get into the weeds of that, because I would definitely disagree with some of those points. But I will move on to another question. So if dating apps, dating culture is rigged in favor of women, then why is it that there are still plenty of men who are successful in the dating field? Are they just getting lucky, or does that mean that the theory is not comprehensive?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at the numbers, if the ratio is 3-1, that still means the top third of men are going to do just fine. They're going to be completely unaffected by this problem. And that's a lot of men, you know, so a lot of men are doing just fine, but a lot of men are struggling. So to say that like men are doing just fine is really discounting what the majority of men are going through. If you are not like 8 out of 10 or better in terms of being conventionally attractive, tall, fit, certain age range, a good job, you know, wealthy or at least comfortable financially, you are really going to struggle online. And then you go out into the real world, go out into the wild, and it's tricky out there. You know, can you approach a woman at work? Can you approach her at the grocery store? If she's got her headphones on or her earbuds in, can you talk to her then? If she smiles at you, does that mean she wants you to talk to her? If she gives you a look, what does that mean? It's really confusing for men out there. We've got all these mixed messages in the media about what's okay and what's not. Cancel culture is very, very strong against men who, all you have to do is, maybe you've had a couple drinks, you're at the bar, there's some women at the bar, you exchange a look, she's with her friends, you go up, you approach respectfully, but you quickly determine that she's enjoying some private time with her friends and doesn't want to be bothered. Suddenly you're the bad guy, you're the creep, maybe the bouncer's escorting you right out of that bar. And again, that erodes your confidence. That makes you not want to approach next time and adds to male loneliness. Whereas women have all the power in those situations. They have all the options. If a woman goes and talks to a man, she's never going to be like mocked or made fun of or labeled a creep or anything like that. She might get rejected if he has a partner already or doesn't think she's attractive enough or whatever. But that happens to men far more than it happens to women.
Okay, which I think does go back a little bit just to the nature of dating and pursuit and all of that. But I'm definitely not denying that you're right, like that there is like mixed messaging and it is kind of difficult, especially for like young men to understand kind of the social dynamics involved and signals and all that kind of stuff.
And that group of young men is one of the most disproportionately affected groups when it comes to the male loneliness epidemic.
Right.
So it's young men, it's recently divorced men, and like older men who don't have a partner for whatever reason. So there are a few very vulnerable groups. Young men is like strikingly one of the most vulnerable groups, and we're seeing that play out. Like that's the group that's struggling right now, struggling for identity, struggling to just know how to be.
Okay. I think one part of this is that there clearly is a disconnect between men that you're talking about and understanding what it is that women want. If there is such a big disconnection that they're constantly terrified of being labeled a creep, clearly they need to do some work on understanding what it is that is appropriate, that is attractive, that women are looking for. Because women want to be approached, women want to date, but no, women are not interested in creeps. So there's a distinction that if you can figure that out, women are open to being approached and to being dated. So I think philosophically, there is something missing from those young men. That is something that's kind of blocking their understanding from understanding how to approach women. Do you concur?
Sure. I mean, but I don't think it's men's fault. That feels very victim blamey, and the whole liberal side is like huge on that. If a woman gets assaulted and anybody dare question like what she was doing in that situation or what she was wearing or if she had too much to drink or how her actions might have contributed to that situation, like, oh my God, they've committed the most grievous sin in the liberal world. Like never blame the victim, right? Well, why are the liberals so quick to blame men for their own loneliness epidemic?
Because, well, I agree that we shouldn't blame victims. I disagree that men are the victims in this situation. If women have standards that they uphold when they're out in public as not to get raped or stalked, I don't see the men as the victim in that situation. Being rejected, if rejection is cause for you to feel like you are a victim, I'm sorry, but you are a very fragile person. Men are not victims in this situation. When it comes to just simple rejection, we could have a deeper conversation about actual victimhood in the loneliness epidemic because that's different. But if we're just talking about approaching women, I don't think it's fair for men to label themselves as victims because they don't know how to approach a woman.
Okay, but I just feel like there's a lot of cultural messaging out there that tells men their needs don't matter. Okay. And there's nothing out there right now telling women that they don't matter. And I get that hasn't always been the case, but I feel like the shift has just been so extreme to tell men basically like, oh, don't be a baby. If you're lonely, it's your fault. It's fine for women to mock and reject you as much as they want. It's fine for them to ghost you, to not engage, to, all the things that are happening to men right now. That is that is specific messaging that's happening in our culture via the media.
Okay. And that's a good point, and I think that transitions well into what I was going to bring up as your third point. So my first question there is, can you clarify or just help me understand the difference between your needs don't matter and your needs override everyone else's, and you'll need to do some work on yourself? Like, where's the line between dismissal and accountability here?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. It sounds like what you're saying is there's a difference between, hey, try a different approach versus, hey, fuck off, we don't care about you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess I'd say the line is whether there's recognition of legitimate suffering before jumping to like, hey, go fix yourself. I'm just not seeing like a lot of empathy. I'm seeing the narrative jump very quickly to, hey, just do the work. This is a you problem, you know? And it's kind of like this narrative in male-female dynamics that's been a thing for a long time, which is, hey, women just want to vent sometimes. They don't need to have their problems immediately fixed by every man, right? And I know I've done that. You've done that as a man. You know, your partner or a woman in your life expresses a problem and you immediately go to like, hey, here's how to fix it.
Solving. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like kind of that's what this is. And it feels a little hypocritical. Like, how about some empathy first? How about some acknowledgement that this is a real struggle? Or let's at least entertain the idea that it might be instead of immediately dismissing. So yeah, I think it's fair to say it's okay to be like, hey, you know, I care about you. I want to help you with these feelings of loneliness. So let me guide you. Let me give you some ideas about what you could do better, what you could do different. But that's not the narrative at all. It's just canceled. It's just like, nope, you did it wrong. You're a creep. You're canceled. Okay. You know, I'm not seeing that kind of engagement. I wish it was happening, but I don't think it is.
So if cultural messaging is, you know, anti-man, then why has there been an explosion of content and resources and discussion specifically about men's mental health, and even phrasing this whole thing as like the male loneliness epidemic, as though loneliness is not pervasive amongst humanity?
So kind of like the fact that we're even having this conversation is evidence that there is empathy.
Oh, totally. And that men are getting attention for it, even when it's not a male-specific problem.
Well, that potentially is a fair point, but I think part of the reason this...
Is it because they're throwing a louder pity party?
No. I think it's because I think conservative voices are feeling more empowered. They're feeling more empowered over the last, 6 to 7 years to say, hey, men are people too. Men have problems too. Like, yeah, we recognize that women have been oppressed and abused and there's a lot of disadvantaged people, but why are we the only ones excluded from that group? You know, you have this liberal side that's supposed to be so empathetic for everybody. Why is it that men are the only one that don't get any empathy?
Well, men would get empathy about genuine disadvantages that they might have, but this is that they are not going to be entitled to advantage as much as they historically consistently have been. So there's a difference between having actual disadvantage and then no longer being entitled to something. Though that may feel the same, often equality can feel like oppression to the people who have been in power. And I think that's what this is. And so there's a difference in empathetic responses to someone who's just simply no longer privileged as opposed to someone who has been historically disadvantaged.
Well, fuck
Suck
you.
It. No, fuck you.
Fuck you. All right.
Okay.
Well, I will close my argument by saying that men have feelings too. And just a simple acknowledgement that, hey, men killing themselves at 4 times the rate of women, men reporting all of these really dire, really damning statistics at ever increasing levels over the past few years simply can't be ignored. And by just saying, sorry, dudes, that's on you, that's not solving anything.
Yeah.
It's making it worse.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And that's why it actually is like a little bit destructive to just try and have like a purely logical debate on it where I'm going to like, retort against anything you say.
Sure.
Because that's true. And no matter what is to blame, if a person is contemplating suicide, that is very sad.
Yeah.
And deserves empathy, even if it is totally self-imposed, which I'm not saying it is. So yeah, that's a good point. And that's why I'm excited to get into the part where past the ring, where we get to actually just empathize for a minute and try and have a real conversation about it.
Yeah.
But
all right. Well, that concludes the conservative traditional take that the male loneliness epidemic is absolutely real and that men are victims of forces beyond their control.
okay.
Now that brings up part 2, which is Dash
Ding, ding.
steel manning the progressive take that the male loneliness epidemic is mostly fake news, and to the extent that it is real, it's self-imposed. So let's get in the ring. Ding, ding, ding.
All right. Just a quick disclaimer. I'm going to be a little bit hostile and aggressive with this.
Whoa.
So to the men who are listening, just try and listen. I promise we're going to get to the part where we all have a little kumbaya. So let's just cut through the bullshit here. If you view emotional openness or vulnerability of any kind with your male friends as gay, or if you aren't capable of being platonic friends with women without making it weird or sexual, then guess what? You have, by your own hand, eliminated nearly all paths in your life to real, genuine connection. Here's what's really happening with this epidemic. Men feel entitled to women's attention, women's validation, and women's partnership without understanding that they need to actually bring something to the table. Women are not going to tolerate this anymore, so men feel rejected. But it's not rejection, it's just the natural consequence of showing up for relationships with nothing to offer. If you're not pleasant to be around, guess what? If you don't reciprocate effort in your relationships, guess what? And if you make everything about you when you hang out with people, guess what? People don't want to hang out with you. That's not an epidemic, that's just simple cause and effect. Every conversation about this online goes the exact same way. Men will point and try and blame everything except for, you guessed it, themselves. They will say that the dating apps are rigged. They will say cancel culture makes them afraid. The pandemic destroyed their networks. They'll say that technology has ruined connection. Anything to avoid the obvious question, are you actually someone that people enjoy being around? Maybe it's that simple. Because socializing, it isn't complicated. If you bring value, reciprocate effort, and if you're not just a giant bummer to hang out with, well, then guess what? People will want to spend time with you. But that requires accountability. And accountability seems to be apparently harder than just blaming women for having boundaries. So,
Wow.
opening statement.
Bringing it.
Yeah.
Strong. Mm-hmm. How many shots did you have? Jesus.
My vodka cran that I've been sipping.
I like how we had vodka shots with a vodka cocktail chaser.
I know.
That's some degenerate shit.
I know.
And
It's making me a little bit mean.
I can see that. I think I like this side of you, Daddy. Okay, so I'm hearing a few points here. You talk about socialization. So I'm hearing that the way men are socialized by traditional masculinity, red pill spaces, and the manosphere is primarily to blame. Mm-hmm. It's a broken philosophy. It stunts connection and limits intimacy. So it's not the things that men are pointing to. It's not, the pandemic. It's not online dating. It's not the Me Too movement. It's
Personal philosophy.
It's their own broken, toxic masculinity.
Yes.
Basically.
Exactly.
Okay. I guess I would be curious how you distinguish between men choose rigid masculinity versus men are socialized into it from childhood. If it's conditioning, is calling it self-imposed really fair? Like, isn't this something that it's not their fault?
Well, at some point, socialization becomes a choice. If we're talking about young men, boys, okay, we can talk about conditioning. But if we're talking about adults of any kind, you can't keep blaming socialization. Like, it's a choice. It's a lifestyle at this point. And you are like actively supporting a worldview with a pretty intense bias. And so I would say you need to stop choosing comfort in the familiar patterns of, not taking accountability and blaming others. And instead, face the discomfort of growth and own up.
I thought this was supposed to be a progressive viewpoint. This sounds awfully a lot like conservative viewpoints of like, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I thought liberals and progressives were all about like, hey, there's no free will. Everything that's happened to you has led to these choices. People who are in poverty, who are disadvantaged, it's not their fault. There's nothing they can do about it. Why suddenly, when it comes to men, and men being very real victims of very real things, is it now it's totally their fault and they can totally change the circumstances?
I mean, I guess I would be reiterating a point from when you were the steel man and I was just asking questions a little bit here, but there's a difference between being genuinely disadvantaged and trying to pull yourself up by bootstraps as opposed to people who are entitled and they're upset that they are not just being handed things, which is how I see this. This is very much, they are not victims of their own homophobia. They are the perpetrators of their own homophobia. And this is the thing that is just like killing connection.
So none of this toxic masculinity is a result of socialization. It's all coming from choices by men.
Toxic masculinity can't survive unless it is perpetuated by men. It is the subscription to these ideas that keep it alive. It's the adherence to it. It's every gay joke. It's every uncomfortable moment because a guy got emotional and then he forever feels guarded about his emotions because his bros made him feel like a chick for showing emotions.
Okay, so at what point does a boy who is indoctrinated with these beliefs...
Indoctrinated how?
The media, like...
The manosphere?
No, like mainstream media. Like look at Top Gun. Very popular movie, right?
Okay.
What does that tell you about masculinity? Like you go watch Top Gun and like... The dudes are on the beach. They're all ripped. They're all buff. Like they're afraid to. And like, we're not here to talk about the volleyball scene. I just played right into your hands. You've been playing the long game. You set me up for this the whole time, you bastard. You just wanted to talk about.
I got you thinking about Miles Teller.
You want to talk about homo Tom Cruise spiking a volleyball, but no. I mean, you can't tell me that like every movie you watched growing up. Obviously not every movie, but the vast majority had some very specific male archetypes that reinforce these problems that you're talking about. Toxic masculine ideas about not being emotional, not seeking help, being stoic, treating women in a certain way, kind of like property. Like, a lot of these ideas about masculinity are reinforced in the media, not just in the manosphere.
I wholeheartedly disagree. As somebody who is a pretty staunch consumer of culture, it seems as though almost every mainstream movie, every mainstream TV show, it has been pushed that men should be vulnerable, that they should have communities and strong connections, and it's the assholes who try to stifle and limit those connections amongst men as being some sort of a gay thing. Like I would love if we had a scoreboard of movies and TV shows and the messaging that they have put forward in the last 40 years, and we'll see who stacks up better.
This might just be reflective of our age and generation gap because a lot of the content I grew up with was just what you're describing as the manosphere, and I agree that I think
even like Breakfast Club. If you go back to that time, there was very much this attitude of it's the immature adolescent boy who scoffs at deep emotional conversations. And even back then, anyone with any intuition at all would be like, oh, he's insecure.
But that was groundbreaking movie at the time.
Yeah.
That was a big deal, because way more prevalent was Top Gun and Miami Vice and like all these ideas that reinforce these like very traditional macho ideas about masculinity.
Okay.
Anyway, we're digressing.
Well, and we don't need to go too deep into movies and TV shows because there is, you're right though, a very large culture that does perpetuate these ideas, but it is the manosphere, it's the red pill spaces that are making these problems much worse and putting forward these ideas of one, just a gross misunderstanding of stoicism, which we call broicism. And I would very much see the whole like broicism culture as contributing to these ideas and why the current like younger generation of men are dealing with this loneliness, because that's what they were raised in.
Okay. You specifically mentioned homophobia.
Mm-hmm.
So help me understand why it's specifically about homophobia rather than just different communication styles. Can't men have close friendships that look different from women's friendships without it being pathological?
There's a couple things here. Men are reporting, as part of this male loneliness epidemic, that they are not satisfied in the male friendships that they have. So I think it is homophobia that's stunting this. Otherwise, men would not be as lonely because they apparently have their own version of satisfied relationships. They don't. Their relationships are stunted. That's part of this problem. So let's not pretend like it's the problem and it's simultaneously not the problem. It is. Their relationships produce less satisfaction than female friendships, or even co-ed relationships are produce more satisfaction. But like men and their male friends, those friendships are proving not to be satisfying because they don't go deep and they don't serve men's needs.
So how do you know, kind of going back to one of the conservative steel man points, how do you know that this lack of deep relationships isn't due to collapsing of the structures that has historically provided them? Church, bowling leagues, fraternal organizations, things like that are disappearing.
Well, I'm definitely not denying that is contributing.
Okay.
Those are spaces that were created for community. Mm-hmm. And I think those are very important. And that's bad when we have fewer and fewer opportunities for community. So totally agree there. And I would love to try and solve that as well. But that is not to say that it is impossible because you are not being handed community on a silver platter. There are still possibilities to create your own community, to create fun traditions, to get together with friends around your own made-up holidays, like whatever. All it takes is just a little bit of proactivity and kind of putting your best foot forward and being willing to stick yourself out there. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
But if you're just waiting for people to show up in your life, or you're complaining that you're not a priority to anyone as you just sit around and don't follow up and don't put in pretty basic relationship management, well, then guess what? You're not going to have relationships. You're not going to have community because it takes work. But if you feel entitled to it, it's not coming.
Okay, fair enough. But what would you say to men who point out that they do have deep male friendships? They can have...
How deep? Prostate. Sorry, go on.
So what would you say to men who point out that they do have deep male friendships? They can be friends just strictly platonically with women, yet they still feel the impact of broader social isolation. Are they just exceptions, or does that complicate your framework at all?
Well, no, I think loneliness is obviously a very broad thing that affects everybody.
Okay.
Older people, men, women, all the things. It's a consequence of the digital age, COVID, all the things. This is not as simple as just dating and friendships. It's a whole bunch of things. So I think there are people who probably do have great relationships, but still feel loneliness.
Yeah.
Totally normal.
Okay. Let's move on to another point that you kind of made in your opening statement about male loneliness correlating with women's liberation from unpaid emotional labor.
That's right.
So it sounds like what you're saying there is that the more women feel empowered to not just, freely provide the validation, the connection that men are seeking, that's more what's contributing to male's loneliness.
Definitely. I think that as soon as the expectations are starting to be released from women to just give attention, validation, and partnership to men. And instead it has to be earned. We are now seeing an uptick in men's loneliness because they see it as it being taken away from them. And they are uncomfortable with the fact that they now have to earn it rather than being entitled to it.
There seems to be an assumption there that this has traditionally been an unfair exchange, that men were just getting that freely from women and not giving anything in return.
They were. Obviously, this is not some universal thing, but what I'm saying is that the reciprocation that needs to exist in relationships is far more equitable now than it ever has been. And that's tough for men who are expecting to start in those engagements with a head start.
Okay, so it sounds like you were just saying it's been inequitable for a long time. So maybe men's role was like, hey, I'm going to be the provider. In exchange for that, I expect any woman I approach to be grateful for that encounter, no matter how shitty I handle it. And then when we're actually in a relationship, I'll have the job, I'll be the breadwinner, but what I get is somebody who's going to bear my children, clean my house, put up with all my bullshit when I get home.
Make my meals.
Yeah, and that has never been equitable. And now that it's starting to get more equitable, men are feeling disenfranchised or mistreated somehow.
Yeah, and I would say that the inequity that existed wasn't just the expectations between the two, but that it was like literally women were being given away by their fathers. I mean, so many of the symbols within marriage still to this day still reek of this past where women were just property that were being handed from a father to a suitor. And women didn't have any say. They were just being given as property to other men. And so women now have a say. And it's pretty crazy that as soon as women have a say, men have to bring something to the table to make it a fair trade and to interest women in that deal. And they sometimes flounder trying to figure that out.
So you seem to be saying that just the suspicious timing of it, the correlation of the timing between the two events proves causation. If that's the case, how do you account for other potential factors? I mean, there's social media, economic precarity, pandemic isolation. There's a lot of factors that could be contributing to this as well. Why are you discounting them and only just seizing upon the timing?
I mean, for sure, correlation is not causation. I'm just saying it's a little bit suspicious that as soon as women start having a say and relationships need to be more equitable and reciprocal, suddenly men are more lonely. I'm just pointing out the coincidence of it, not saying it's a direct causation.
Okay. Fair enough. So walk me through how this explains male loneliness among single men who aren't seeking romantic relationships or expecting emotional labor from women, because they're reporting some of the same effects. So what's happening with these guys?
I mean, I think that goes to like the male friendships, and it's people who are struggling to cultivate intimacy in all of their relationships. Because here's the thing, I very much believe that the depth of intimacy is what will determine a person's loneliness. You can live in a hustle and bustle city surrounded by a lot of people and still be lonely. That's because the people you're surrounded by, there's no intimacy with those people. Perhaps you don't have any relationships where someone makes you feel seen in a particular way. Maybe you can't relate with people on like an existential belief level or religious level, or maybe you have a talent or something. And when you don't have friends or family who understand something that's really important to you, it can feel isolating. It can make you feel lonely.
Yeah, sure.
You don't feel seen. And so like that's kind of the crux here on whether or not a person feels lonely. And so even if a man isn't interested in having a relationship with women, he might still feel lonely, but that's because he probably struggles to cultivate intimacy in his male friendships, even relationships with coworkers or whatever it might be. And I would say that one giant like governor to the intimacy in your relationships is what you feel safe expressing. And if you genuinely have been socialized to believe that, expressing emotions is gay, or a womanly thing, good luck. You're going to have some repressed problems that, it manifesting as loneliness is just the first of your problems.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Okay, let's move on to kind of your last point about men refusing accountability and blaming external factors.
Okay.
I thought that was particularly powerful, where you were just saying, like, it's not about the pandemic, it's not about online dating, it's not about this or about that, it's just about men refusing to accept accountability.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I guess I'm curious how you distinguish between legitimate external factors making connection harder versus personal accountability. Can't both be real, structural changes and individual responsibility?
Yes, both can definitely be real. But when someone lists 10 external factors and 0 personal factors, then clearly they're avoiding accountability, which I think is indicative of a much bigger problem within than it actually stacking out to be some balance between these two things.
Is that what's happening? I mean, what makes you say that? Where are you seeing that?
Well, I think we're seeing this particular problem manifest across a whole slew of men's issues. It's not just the male loneliness epidemic. I think we could have a conversation about accountability in almost every single episode that we have. And in the political landscape, I think accountability is kind of like the main thing as I see missing from some of the more problematic ideologies.
So you don't see men saying, this pandemic is real, please help us. Isn't that a cry for accountability? Do you really feel like that's just looking for validation and being a victim? I mean, isn't there an implied sense of, hey, this is a real problem, please acknowledge it, please validate us so we can work on fixing it, because we don't want to be lonely anymore?
That's totally real. And I can see how certain giant cultural things like a pandemic can contribute to a person's ability to go out and create social opportunities. Definitely. But the problems that I'm addressing here, which are massive, which are talking about a person not understanding how to cultivate intimacy. This is not some niche, obscure thing. This is a giant issue on what it means to be a human who socializes. This does not have nearly as much bearing as even COVID-19 does on your social life. Like, if you have some pretty intense homophobia that is corrupting and wrapping its tendrils around a lot of your viewpoints and thoughts, that's the problem. We don't need to get into talking about, fraternities don't have the emphasis that they used to. Back it up, buddy. Let's put these items on a priority list, and your homophobia is at the very top of that list. Your misogyny is second on that. Well, I'm not going to put it second, but is at the top of the list as well.
Yeah.
And way down at the bottom of that list, we can start to look at things like, social clubs don't exist quite as often anymore, or COVID-19, or gaming is surface level, or like whatever it is. Let's talk about personal philosophy being completely bankrupt of accountability first, and then I'll hear you out on all those other things.
Okay, fair enough. One of the things that you really hit hard in your opening statement, that you were admittedly very brutal on, which is basically, don't be a fucking loser, Yeah. Like, bring some value, be cool, be somebody that some people want to hang out with. So I guess help me understand what bringing value means without it sounding transactional, because are friendships really about a value exchange, or isn't that itself a problematic framing?
Totally. And this is a great question, because I actually feel like a lot of the men whose stories I read online, I can tell that they are approaching their social interactions in a very result-seeking way. Rather than just being curious and striking up like a friendly conversation, it genuinely turns into like this, so like, are we going to go home later type of a like desperation. Okay. And that is transactional. And I think that's part of the problem. So I don't want to phrase this as transactional, though I do believe that like it is helpful to view socializing as, hey, we benefit each other. You make me laugh. We make each other feel seen. We go do fun things together. But if one person is bringing the value and the other person is not doing any of that, I'm trying to figure out a way how to deliver this without it seeming transactional, but also being just honest. You have to bring something to the table in your relationships. You need to be fun to be around, or people don't want to be around you.
So if I'm summarizing it correctly, it's kind of like for centuries, and we could spend an whole episode or an entire season getting into the why of this, but for centuries, men got accustomed to a situation where they were just entitled to women's emotional labor, entitled to women's bodies, entitled to their validation, entitled to approach however they deemed appropriate, whether it actually was or not, entitled to basically not have to take any accountability for how their actions were affecting women. And all you're advocating is to level that playing field a little bit, so that men start looking in the mirror if they're lonely and saying, what am I doing to fix the problem?
Yeah, and do people enjoy being around me?
Yeah.
There's a similar controversial conversation that we could have on whether or not your family is entitled to your love once you're an adult. And that's a tough conversation, but I think
I love that conversation.
It's a great one. But like the new generation is all starting to kind of get synced up on realizing that no, even your family is not entitled to a relationship. If you are a dog shit narcissistic parent, as soon as your kid becomes an adult, they owe you nothing. And if you are awful to be around, they are going to go no contact with you.
In fact, the other way around. As adults, you made the decision to have kids. You brought them into this world, therefore you're responsible for them, not the other way around. Not that you gave them some great gift of life and clothes and food and shelter. That's like the bare minimum. That's what you're saying is like the new philosophy, which I personally happen to agree with.
It's like once you're adults, it's no longer you owe me a relationship. It's very much like, well, I want to have a relationship with you if it's a relationship that I enjoy and that I get value out of. But if you're going to be like borderline abusive and rude and all the things, then I'm going no contact.
Yeah.
Our relationship as adults is going to function the way that it does with any other adults. You have to be like enjoyable to be around, or I'm never going to talk to you.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I think that's a good conclusion to The Ring. Well done.
Ding, ding. For this particular issue, I wanted to add a little bit of an addition to our analysis breakdown after The Ring, because this is an issue that actually affects a lot of men and that men are suffering within. And so I don't want to just get into the intellectual sport of a logical debate. I want to, have a real conversation about the ways in which we need to try and exercise some empathy here, as well as talk about kind of some of the hard truths that we think need to come out of this. A quote that I often say is that everybody in the world needs love and consequences, but everybody in the world belongs in one of two groups, in that their growth currently needs more love or more consequences. And so with this particular issue, I think there are some good things that we could point out where men need to feel seen, need to feel love, need to feel empathy, but where they also need to face some consequences and own up to their own loneliness.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is a really challenging issue for me personally, because I see a ton of chatter online about this. I've talked to a lot of men who feel lonely and feel like the male loneliness epidemic is absolutely a real thing. Full disclosure, like me personally, I don't feel it a bit. And so, I
mean, it's tough for us to talk on this because we are very lucky.
We are. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I look at this issue and my first instinct is to be like, oh, wow, you're lonely. Basically everything you said in your progressive steel man of well, don't be fucking boring. Be interesting to talk to. But even beyond that stuff to me is more surface level. Be a good hang, be interesting, be cool, be witty, be funny, be hot. That's all pretty surface level. I like to think of it as going deeper of like, hey, if you're a man and you're lonely and what companionship looks like to you is like female companionship, dating, stuff like that, which I think it is. I think most of the time that's what we're talking about if we're being real here, right? We're not necessarily talking about men having more male friends, although that can help fix this problem. But don't you think when most men say the male loneliness epidemic, they're talking about female companionship?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So my response to that is like, do you actually like women? What are you actually doing to show an interest in female issues? Mm-hmm. What do you know about femininity? What are you doing to empathize with women? What are you doing to learn about women so that women feel good and safe around you and they're interested in being your friends or your lovers? Uh-huh. That's where I kind of go with it. And I don't know, like I see a lot of men who just see women as accessories or objects or otherwise just objectifying them in some way.
Yeah.
And it's an ego thing or it's a sex thing. It's not about like, oh, I actually care about women's issues.
Yeah.
I really feel like women are aching as much as men for connection with the opposite sex. Mm-hmm. And they are aching to be understood and truly loved and truly cherished, just like men are. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's so frustrating because you have these two groups who are equally pining for each other. And all they have to do is like make an effort to really understand each other. And so to me, this really falls out to being like a 50-50 issue. You know me, I'm pretty fucking liberal, and I'm kind of more like 80-20 on a lot of these arguments on the progressive side. But this is one that to me feels 50-50. Like there is validity to the male loneliness epidemic. Men are killing themselves at alarming rates. It's a real thing. And to sit here and just point the finger and say it's all your fault feels wrong. It feels like an affront to progressive ideals of having empathy and caring about the other side and choosing love, you know? Mm-hmm. But then my own personal experience is kind of the opposite, where I'm like, get over it. Like just be cool, be fun, be interesting, be nice.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I don't know what to do about all that.
Yeah. It's definitely tough. I think that there continues to be more and more support for kind of the basic idea that like one of the most important things that affects our health and affects our like overall life satisfaction is the quality of our relationships. Mm-hmm. For people who are on their deathbed and expressing regrets, one of the most common things that they see is that it's the quality of a person's relationships which determines their satisfaction in life. More than their careers, more than their achievements, more than, the money they amass, more than whatever it might be, is just the quality of their relationships, which is something that applies to every chapter of your life, not just one, not just when you're a kid, not just when you're whatever, but even when you're older. If you can maintain quality relationships, it has a very direct correlation on your health and your satisfaction. And so let's just accept that. Let's just currently in this conversation, let's just say that the quality of your relationships is the number one priority if you want to feel satisfied.
Okay.
Obviously, it's also the antidote to loneliness, having quality relationships. I think that's what I would point to very first as being the largest contributor of happiness to my life. So I can definitely empathize with people who don't have that. Like if I didn't have the relationships that I do, let's just say I ended up in a career that kind of just isolated you. I think working remote is often a pretty big complaint of people talking about how technology can ruin connection.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's quite often that just through career and kind of happenstance, you can just end up in a place where you're just not exposed to places to make friends easily. And maybe you don't even think about it for a few years. Like men might get to a point where they're like, oh, I'm 32 years old and I just realized I don't have any friends. Yeah. Like you can kind of get lost in the sauce for a couple of years before you realize, oh, whoa, like I'm out of touch.
I remember feeling lonely in my 20-year marriage.
Really?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because it was kind of like that, where I sort of lost touch with friends, and the kids were in earlier stages where they weren't like friends yet. You know, I was dealing with, so I was busy, but I was lonely.
Uh-huh. I made a reference to living in like a hustle and bustle city. At one point, I was living in Serbia, and I was like right in the heart of downtown, surrounded by people all the time, but everybody spoke Serbian. Nobody spoke English.
Yeah.
And I mean, people spoke English, but very few. And it was very isolating. It was weird to be just surrounded by so many people, but to feel lonely. And it's because if they don't speak your language, that's just one degree of intimacy that you can't get into in a relationship, because they can't make you feel seen on a basic linguistics level.
Yeah.
But then even if there are people who speak your language, but they have a totally different lifestyle and they're just not good at kind of empathizing and understanding your viewpoints, there's another degree of intimacy that you can't get into because they just don't make you feel seen and you can't really engage. But then there's a million other degrees of intimacy in relationships where the deeper you go, the more seen you feel, the more satisfaction you get out of the quality of that relationship.
You're giving me a nice takeaway from this conversation, which is the key to solving loneliness is intimacy. Mm-hmm. And the key to intimacy is speaking someone else's language.
Totally. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's really nice. And totally. I mean, that's what empathy is. And that's why empathy very much reads to most people as affection, is because empathy is just seeing a person. I think usually, just maybe this is my personal take on empathy, but people always think it's this very loving gesture. But personally, I just see empathy as connecting the dots on cause and effect of a person. But it's just because that usually feels so nice that we kind of see it as like this loving gesture. Yeah. But you know, if I have a couple conversations with you as a friend, and then you hear me repeat back to you what I've noticed, and I talk about your childhood and how maybe that could have affected this, and then you went to the schooling and you ended up in a marriage that did, and I kind of regurgitate and show you that like I'm perceiving you in a deep way where I care about you and I'm paying attention to these details. That feels good. Like that's a bonding thing.
Yeah.
And it's just that I'm trying to put the pieces of who you are together.
Yeah.
That's like what empathy is. And it's kind of like, yeah, like you said, like it's speaking their language on a very intimate level, the language of who they are.
Yeah.
And when somebody can speak that and make you feel seen in a way that like you'll never feel seen in a small talk conversation with coworkers.
Yeah.
You can have some deep connection. Oh, it does not need to be romantic, and it can hit as deep as a romantic relationship does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I learned from therapy, and it's been really reinforced, you know, after, you know, separating from my marriage of 20 plus years and getting back out in the dating world and doing all that. And it's the idea that we put so much stock in the golden rule. Basically, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's a nice like default for strangers because you don't know them. Like start with that. Mm-hmm. But the real the diamond rule of relationships isn't treat other people how you want to be treated. It's treat other people how they want to be treated.
Yeah.
It shows that you're taking the time to get to know them, to speak their language, to see them, everything you just described. And so like that's to me the highest law of relationships.
Yeah.
And it feels basic to me as I've gotten out there and dated, and it's led to a lot of great success, both in romantic dating, but also in like getting to know women on a deep personal level. And I have so many female friends now who I feel connected with and intimate with in a lot of ways, not just physically or sexually, but emotionally.
Yeah.
Because they feel seen and they feel safe, and I get that in return from them. And I don't know, I felt far less lonely these last 4 or 5 years than in the years before. So for me, like post-pandemic, post-technology, this allegedly horrible world of online dating and all of these things. Like, I just have had a very different experience. And I do recognize that a lot of that comes from certain privileges that I have. But I think... No, because I've just been able to connect with a lot of people because of that. Learning to speak their language.
Yeah.
Having empathy, taking a genuine interest.
Yeah.
And those are things absolutely within our control. You don't have to go to the gym and get a six-pack. Again, evidence of that. You don't have to be extraordinarily rich. You just have to make an effort.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really great point, talking about kind of the golden rule and misunderstanding that. That relates really well when it comes to dating and to trying to attract people. And this is kind of a critical error that I see a lot of men do, where we kind of are constantly projecting the way that we want to be loved.
Yeah.
And that's how we love other people and the way that we are wanting it to come back to us. And that's just totally normal. We all do it. I did it in my relationships for years and years before I even had a slight idea that I was doing it.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh, I'm loving her by the love language that I want to receive back.
Yeah.
And she kind of did the same thing to me.
And I'm judging her love by her ability or inability to do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so this is so good to separate this and to go, oh, wait, hold on. No, maybe I need to love them how they want to be loved, not how I want to be treated.
Right.
But also when you're attracting a partner, this is like very freaking true. Men and women are not attracted to each other in the same ways. And so if we made a mention in the debate where you were like, men would love to be objectified. That's true.
Yeah.
A lot of men would love to be objectified, and it's part of the reason why they act in that way to women, because it's them literally projecting the way they want attention onto women, and they're just totally oblivious to the fact that maybe this is not how women are attracted. And they're just missing the point on what they need to be bringing to attraction and to relationships. Guess what? They don't want to be loved in the way that you want to be loved. So don't bring that objectifying bullshit into it.
Yeah, it's so true.
Don't.
It's so true.
We get that you would love to be groped and sexually harassed. That's not their experience. So don't do it. Like, this feels so obvious, but I think it's a subconscious thing that like men are not taking an inventory of, and then they just go and they try to pull the Casanova moves that they would love to see get pulled on them.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It is so true. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so what are we gonna call that rule? It's not the golden rule. Golden rule is the baseline. It's the default with strangers, but the real like transcendent rule to intimate relationships is to treat other people how they want to be treated.
Yeah.
The
platinum rule. I was just going there.
The diamond rule.
Uh-huh. Something better than the golden rule.
The universal rule.
Yeah.
We'll come up with something. I don't know. But it works.
Totally.
It absolutely works. Mm-hmm. And not as a tactic or a manipulation tool to get women to like you or sleep with you. It works as a tool for what you're talking about, creating real intimacy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some like last thoughts on empathizing here? Because,
well, yeah, key takeaways from this discussion. I really, like I was saying earlier, I really feel like it's a 50-50. So the things from the conservative traditional viewpoint that I think really resonated are just the very dire statistics for men.
Right.
It is real. As much as, unfortunately, in my lack of empathy, I have poo-pooed this issue and said, oh, boo-hoo, men, if you're feeling a loneliness epidemic, it's your own fault. More and more people are able to overcome that. I just...
Shane Gillis rolling in his not grave. Just kidding. That was good.
Beautiful dogs, beautiful, beautiful dogs. Abu al-Baghdadi died like
Died
a dog.
like a dog.
But where was I going with this?
Poo-pooed the issue for a long time.
I have poo-pooed this issue for a long time. The reality is, it is real. So if you're a man who is experiencing these feelings, we empathize. We recognize that this is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And you just can't ignore the suicide rates. You can't ignore these feelings of loneliness, of isolation, and all of that.
Yeah. And I think there is also a big thing. There's a generalization, but within men love to feel like a priority. They want to feel useful. They want to feel like somebody's thinking about them. And that's a big part of this, is that maybe it is in the late 20s or early 30s when you finally have that like light bulb moment of like, whoa, I'm lonely. And you start to think a little bit deeper and like, if I were to just die right now, would anyone notice? And when you're that disconnected, that can feel really like a whole other level of isolating, because it's now on like an existential level where it's like, I have not made an impact on anyone. And so my life currently means nothing. If you kind of view like your impact on people and your relationships as where you derive the value of life, then yeah, it can be a horrible feeling to kind of realize that. And so let's like nurse that problem, and let's find one person, whether you meet them online gaming, whether it be a pen pal, whether it be a neighbor who walks their dog at a certain time and maybe you walk your dog at the same time. Like just start making a consistent effort with somebody, and just be proactive and be fun. Like just be fun. Like it's crazy how easy it is. A phrase that I love, just think about what would it mean to do an unnecessary kindness for anybody. And it is a beautiful way to cultivate relationships with literally anyone.
Yeah.
I've done this at concerts. I've done this out on the street. I've done this in like the most mundane places ever, like the post office. I became friends with like one of the employees at a post office that I frequented. Like just any kind of pattern or consistent schedule that you have, try and find a person within it that you can just build some routine and some rapport with. Just start there and start like today. And it doesn't have to be some grand thing that lasts forever, but just like prove to yourself that you can spark up a connection with anybody. You just need to want to.
Can I add something to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Do it in a way that's at least slightly uncomfortable for you.
Totally.
And do it in a way that does not serve you.
Yeah.
Other than the obvious becoming more empathetic and loving. That's one thing I often struggle with, and I hate to admit that. I hate to admit that a lot of what I do is consciously or subconsciously like, hey, how is this helping me? Mm-hmm. I think that's natural, right? We all have limited time, and I've got kids and responsibilities, and so I'm almost always thinking about, okay, is this a good use of my time? Mm-hmm. But I think what you're saying is just try to be as objectively empathetic, altruistic, as you can. Mm-hmm. So take this opportunity in a way that's like, maybe when nobody else is around, so your friends or your girlfriend or your coworkers don't get to see you being a good guy. Mm-hmm. It's just you being a good guy when nobody's watching. Uh-huh. And maybe it's, you have a conversation with somebody you've noticed seems lonely. Could be a guy on the street, homeless guy.
Totally.
Could be a, service employee, a worker somewhere who just seems different, seems lonely. And that if you spark up a conversation, it's probably going to turn into 5 or 10 minutes that you don't have. Mm-hmm. Do it anyway.
Yeah.
I struggle with that, but it's something I could easily do.
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be that big. Sometimes like a good way to do it is just to break out of your scripts.
Yeah.
People like to be broken out of their scripts. And for years, it's like I would do just a good job to minimize my imposition on people out in public, to just be like, thank you very much. Like, have a good day. And just follow scripts, be easy, be predictable to not make people feel uncomfortable. But suddenly, if you're just friendly and you kind of break out of the scripts and it's like, rather than saying, hey, how's your day going? Let's just come up with a slightly more creative way that maybe this person has not heard that phrased to break them out of their script. Be like, so today is a pretty wonderful day, wouldn't you say? Like even something like that will make a person be like, huh? Kind of like wake up out of their NPC moment. And it's pleasant.
Yeah.
Any interaction that you have can be surprisingly pleasant if you just try and like infuse something a little bit different and unique into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I like that. We've talked a lot about how according to science, one of the most attractive vibe you can give off is that of authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that if I can generalize for a minute about women and men, women, in my experience, are far more intuitive than men. And so they can sense motives. They can sense intentions.
Totally.
And you've kind of hit on this already tonight in both your steel man and in your takeaways of just be a man out there who is just genuinely trying to connect and trying to offer something that's not in exchange for something else or leading to something else. So I think it'd be an interesting exercise to consciously, like, let's say you're a single man and you're kind of out in the wild, talking to people at bars, going to parties, going to clubs, doing the things that you do to try to meet people that we're getting reports are more and more difficult for men to do because they're just having difficulty. Well, take a month, take a 30-day period and decide that I'm going to talk to everybody I can at these parties, but I'm not going to ask anybody for their number. I'm not going to flirt with them. My only agenda is to get to know somebody without an agenda.
And to just have a pleasant moment.
Just have a pleasant moment and leave it at that.
Yeah.
And learn how to carry that energy with you, because I think it's a very inviting energy.
Totally.
It's an energy that people want to be around.
Yes.
And it's learned behavior.
Yes. Because going back to that intuition, I think something everyone can kind of pick up on is if a person approaches you and you can kind of sense that they want something out of you.
Yeah.
But if you really truly are giving off the energy of like, no, I'm just trying to have a pleasant moment. All right, see you later.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's just a kind person.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't want anything. He just was a bright, lovely presence. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who wouldn't appreciate a non-creepy compliment from a random person who doesn't seek anything in exchange.
Nice tits.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Don't do that.
But no, yeah, I mean, just, like, I love those shoes. You're having a good hair day, I don't know, anything.
Yeah.
And
but not a flirtatious sexual
not
comment.
flirtatious.
Not that.
Yeah. And some things can be like ambiguous, like, is this flirting? Well, if you say something nice and then you say goodbye and walk away, it wasn't flirting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
You don't need to wait for them to like reciprocate.
Right.
No.
In fact, better if you just take off.
Yeah. It's better if it's just like, bye.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh,
yeah,
just a pleasant person.
And you are now learning to carry positive energy that attracts people.
Yeah.
Rather than desperately seeking something.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Well, let's transition off of the empathetic approach a little bit and just come up with a couple hard truths.
Consequences, truths.
We genuinely do care about this issue, and we read a lot of the stories, and we're trying to get into it, and we're trying to really understand it. But it is not just a matter of empathizing. There is the problem solution oriented mindset that we need to go into, and that the men who are struggling with this need to listen to. And constantly pointing the finger and blaming other people will not solve the problem, because this is, to a degree, self-imposed.
So what are some of those hard truths?
Well, that's one. So you go.
Yeah. I mean, the one I find myself getting on often is I will hear men say, like, oh, ever since the Me Too movement, I just can't talk to women. without being labeled a creep. And I'm like, damn, if the Me Too movement, in other words, women feeling empowered to report sexual assault and harassment, if that is impacting your dating game, you should take a hard look in the mirror.
Right. That's a little bit of like an admission of guilt when people bring that up.
Big time.
Yeah.
I happen to be around, frequently around a generation of men who's like a little older than me. I'm a very young Gen Xer, almost millennial. And a lot of the people I hang around with in a work setting are old Gen Xers or even young baby boomers. And I see them constantly making women uncomfortable, unintentionally, but they just lack awareness.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the hard truths, is that learn to understand that women come from generation after generation of abuse, exploitation, assault, trafficking, horrible, traumatic behaviors perpetuated almost exclusively by men.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your earlier point about perspective, they just have a different outlook on life and on these interactions, and we can't project onto them what we would want as men from those interactions.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's a hard truth to admit, is that as a man, you just have certain privileges, certain life experiences that are very, very different, and you need to put in a lot of work to learn what you might be doing to make these people uncomfortable. So that if your experience with women post Me Too is that you're getting labeled a creep, well, guess what? They thought you were a creep before Me Too. They have always thought you were a creep. They just didn't feel empowered to say or do anything about it.
Right.
So how can you change?
Yeah. My next hard truth would be, men, you need to have platonic friendships with women. You have to. Here's the truth. You need to be able to turn off the attraction in your head. It's easy. If you can't do that, I worry about the women's safety who you are in the presence of. The coworkers, the family, the people who you supposedly don't know how to compartmentalize your sexual attraction. You can turn it off. Make a conscious choice. Say, hey, here's this person. Click. I'm just not going to think about them in that way. Instead, I'm going to be just interested in them as a person, and I want to be friends with them. Being friends with a woman. This sounds like I don't even know how to say this without it sounding condescending because it's so basic. But like, if you are good at being friends with a woman, that is 80% of what it is to be in a romantic relationship with a woman. So if you don't know how to be friends with a woman, you don't know how to do the whole enchilada. So if you want to get good at attracting women, get good at being friends with them. This is something that I learned in middle school. My best friend was a girl. And then I was like, this is an awesome friendship. It's so nice to like not have to worry about the sexual component. And so I started actually having that conversation when I became friends with women, where I was like, hey, I think you're really awesome. Just to dispel like any awkwardness. I think you're great, but I'm like not interested in anything. I would just love to be friends with you. And it was amazing how many incredible friendships with women, boom, 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 just came out of a lovely little clarification. It made them feel so much more at ease being friends with me. And that we had these delightful friendships. And suddenly, like, what could have been a caveman brain where I isolate into my experience as a man and don't understand how women's brains work. Well, now suddenly it's like I understand, my female friends just as well as I do my male friends. And that makes you a much better potential romantic partner as well.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
More hard truths. What other?
Homophobia is the last one. I don't even know where to start on addressing this, men. But the homophobia is something you need. It's killing you. This guy right here is like my best friend, and we have such a deep, deep friendship. And I hate the thought of our relationship having stayed closer to surface level because like we were worried about being gay. Like, I don't give a fuck. I like, what's it going to take, man? I know this is going to sound kind of crazy, but like, do you need to just prove to yourself that you can kiss a guy on the mouth and you're not going to shrivel up and die? Do you need to like what do you need to do to quiet that fear? Like, do you need that kind of exposure therapy? Because just so you know, the homophobia, which is very much coming from like the traditional masculine philosophy, reads as insecurity to everyone except for men. In the
toxic men
in the similar belief.
Other homophobic men.
When we're talking about women being intuitive, they pick up on this like that. It reads as nothing but insecurity. If you like, oh, I'm not gay, if that's what you're asking, you just broadcast to the world that your emotional intelligence score is like down here. So stop giving yourself away. Like, the homophobia is announcing to the world that you are an emotionally stunted person.
Yeah. Who was it? Was it Winston Churchill? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I don't know. I feel like it's the same thing with homophobia. Like, what's more gay, being gay or being afraid of being gay?
Right.
You know? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I laugh about it because I feel like I'm a painfully straight man, straighter than I would probably like to be honest. But like, I could not care less if another man wants to give me a hug, say gay shit, tell me they're attracted to me even. Maybe they don't know where I stand and they're like, hey, I think you're hot. Do you want to fuck? And I'd be like, no, thank you. But like, I think you're hot too. And I'd love to be friends.
And I'm flattered.
And I'm flattered. Like, why are we so offended by that?
Right.
You know, I remember one of my early work experiences, this is 25 years ago in real estate. I was sitting in an open house and interacted with this guy, and he was really nice and clearly very interested in chatting with me. And he asked for my business card, and I'm like, oh, sure. And later that night, I got a phone call from him on my cell phone, which was unusual at that hour. And I answer, and he's like, oh, hey, this is so-and-so from the open house. And I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, yeah, nice, cool. And good to chat with you. Did you have some questions about the house? And he goes, well, no, actually, I just was like really impressed with you talking, and I just wondered if you wanted to get a drink sometime. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, I guess, but like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I don't know if you're into guys, you know? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I go, actually, I'm married. I'm to a woman, happily. And I go, but I'm really flattered that you would ask. It takes a lot of guts to call somebody cold like that when you don't know how they're going to react. And I applaud you for that and wish you luck. And which seemed like a very just basic human response that you should give. This guy was blown away. He was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I was so nervous to call. Like, I don't ever talk to guys because I'm just afraid they're going to ridicule me or get mad or get offended. And I'm like, why would I be offended that somebody thinks I'm attractive?
Right.
Unless I'm afraid of these feelings that maybe I'm having, you know? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So I tell that story not to like pat myself on the back because I didn't feel like I did anything extraordinary other than just be like a normal, decent human being. But the fact that he found that so remarkable that somebody was just nice to him and wasn't a dick made me really sad, actually. And hopefully a lot's changed in 25 years in that regard. But homophobia just does not serve us. What do we gain from homophobia?
Well, nothing. I don't think anyone consciously chooses homophobia.
Yeah.
They definitely can perpetuate it, but I don't think anyone chooses it. But like, here's the big thing for me, just like the emotional logic of it, is that if you feel fear or discomfort around something, The presence of that emotion means that you feel susceptible to something. So if I threaten to flick you with my finger, there's probably not going to be much of a fear response. But if I threaten to swing a hammer at your head, you'll probably have a bigger fear response. And the difference is you feel more susceptible to being hit by a hammer than being flicked by a finger. And so when men have uncomfortable fear-based responses to the presence of homosexuality or intimacy or whatever it may be, what that is saying is that deep down you feel susceptible to it.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you want to be a strong man who is resilient and who is invincible, clearly feeling susceptible to the presence of homosexuality is far from being strong and invincible. And so you should really get comfortable with being in the presence of people who are different than you and have different sexual orientations than you if you want to be a strong man who is, unbothered by that. But homophobia reads as like deep subconscious susceptibility, almost as though you feel as though you can be changed simply by the presence of a homosexual or somebody who exhibits homosexual qualities like having intimate, deep conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
or giving hugs or anything that you might associate with being gay. And so I hope that makes sense, because I don't think any man would listen to this and want to appear susceptible to something like a person's gayness.
Yeah.
Hopefully your identity as a man and how you relate to your own sexuality isn't so fragile that the presence of a man who's gay threatens that. Yeesh.
And that's, just to put it, what I think you're saying for even more simply is we exhibit fear when we feel a threat.
Yeah.
That's it. So if I'm threatened by your gayness, it's probably not because I think you're going to kill me or beat me up. It's probably because I think you might want to fuck me, and I just might want to fuck you back.
He's gonna turn me
right,
like a zombie.
I mean, that's what you're saying, isn't
Yeah.
it? And I think you're so spot on. And it's sad that something as stupid as homophobia is contributing to this male loneliness epidemic.
Yes.
It's preventing men from connecting with each other. It's preventing men from doing anything that they would associate with femininity.
Yep.
Such as being vulnerable with their feelings, such as having female friends. All of these things are the cure for male loneliness epidemic. So just to restate where I think we're at on this, we're agreeing that the male loneliness epidemic is real.
Yeah.
But I think we're also agreeing that it is caused by these toxic ideas about masculinity, such as homophobia, and that the male loneliness epidemic is, I'm not going to say easily treated, but simply treated.
Yeah.
Treated through more empathy, treated through more education, treated through more vulnerability. Accountability, yeah. Mm-hmm. But if I could champion one point on the conservative side that I think really rings true, it's that, liberals and progressives are the ones who are constantly calling for more empathy. We're calling for more empathy as a cure to this.
Yeah.
So how can we not say, let's also be more empathetic to the fact that it is real?
Totally.
Let's be empathetic to the fact that a lot of people who feel homophobia were taught that. We're conditioned that way. Yeah. We're taught by their dad or their brother or their, friends that like gay people are scary for whatever reason.
Right. And on like a privilege scale, which is like, were you born advantaged to disadvantaged in some particular way? I mean, we could say that like men who are kind of in this pipeline and in these beliefs were born and then kind of kept themselves in it, but they are philosophically disadvantaged, that they were born into worldviews that were philosophically and emotionally stunting them. So yeah, and any person who's kind of born into a disadvantage deserves empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. I think that was one of the strongest points on the conservative side.
I agree.
was that like, hey, this is not just their fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that is a nice segue as we close this episode to tease next week's episode, which is going to be Check Your Privilege.
What do you mean, check my privilege? I don't have any privilege. I've worked my ass off for everything I have,
yeah.
Dash. What the fuck are you talking about?
Even just saying check your
I
privilege.
came from poverty, goddammit.
Yeah.
I'm a self-made man.
I struggle. Yeah. I feel my own blood pressure spike when I say check your privilege. It's such a triggering phrase.
Yeah.
So, yes, we are going to be talking about that. And I will be steel manning the traditional take, Charlie on progressive. But until then, stay manly, San Diego.